serious, what are some signs of suicidal tendencies which lot of friends and relatives miss? My dad gave me a scare about 5 years ago. I called him and he didn't sound right. Wasn't sure if he was having a medical emergency or had harmed himself, so I called 911 to go to his house. I was 6 hours away in a different state. The responders called me to say he was just drunk. He called me later and I said he had scared me, and he started crying and said I would never harm myself. You guys are my life, meaning my sister and I. Hearing those words from him soothed my worries. He's my dad and I believed him. He took his life in July. The last time I saw him he was the happiest he'd ever been. What I've learned from this is that these tendencies don't go away. Even if the person gets help and seemingly recovers, I think the tendency may always be boiling under the surface as a fail-safe for them, something to fall back on. I missed the biggest red flag of all, that he had thought of it before. I think it can recur and rear its ugly head again for them. I've also learned that at that time, 5 years ago, he probably 100% meant what he said. He probably thought he would never do it. I know if someone is apologizing a lot and giving away their belongings, that is often a sign of them trying to create closure before they try something. Social withdrawal, and giving away useful possessions, as opposed to sentimental ones, which is less rare. If a close friend contacts you for the first time in a few weeks and tries to give you a possession they use frequently, don't just take it. Spend some serious time with them. Want to add something else? Trust your gut. If someone isn't suicidal but you act as though they are, there is little harm, and sometimes you will pick up signs at a subconscious level. Someone I was close to was suicidal and I got a vibe I couldn't explain that something was wrong. She's better now. If someone goes from being really obviously sad to really obviously content, pay attention. They have a plan and they are likely going to act on it soon. Withdrawing from being social is the classic missable sign. Keep an eye out, especially if that person is usually happy and jokey. They could just be having a bad day, but better safe than sorry. Being extra impatient, quick to anger, rude, snappy can be a sign that they are pushing people away. So again, if this is out of character for someone, just push through the insults and make sure they know you're there for them. I'm not saying stop worrying after they seem to be improving. Depression and suicidal tendencies are a lifelong struggle. I'm merely pointing out 2 of the potential initial signs. Didn't expect this comment to get so much attention. I hope it helped at least one of the people that upvoted X. Everybody is different and it doesn't always show. If you're concerned, just ask. It shows you're serious and you care. Also, if you're not a trained psychologist, don't try to fix them or offer advice. Just listen to them. Be a supportive open ear and encourage them to get help. A sudden and natural calmness following a particularly bad time. Ghosting everyone. Social isolation. I used to do this a lot when I was depressed and no one picked up on it. Isolation. If someone is showing signs of secluding themselves, staying at home, in their room, or in bed, it's usually not a good sign. A great way to help is to get them out. Usually they'll be against it, but it's way better for them than letting them be alone with their thoughts. If your depressed friend, family member very suddenly becomes happy, talkative, and willing to go out more, this could mean that they've planned their suicide, are emotionally relieved at the idea, and are trying to spend their last days seeing their loved ones. This is very nuanced because obviously some depressed people have good days and bad days, but if this comes up with a bunch of other red flags, be on high alert. I also want to add, a change like this could come after a friend starts antidepressants. A lot of antidepressants warn that there's a change of increased suicidal tendencies, but there's a sort of weird reason for that. Depression can often cause people to lose motivation, and even if they are suicidal, can lack the motivation to go through with it. Sometimes, after suicidal people start antidepressants, they gain their motivation back but still have the suicidal urges, which can lead to suicide attempts. One I haven't seen mentioned yet is that people seriously contemplating their own death can undergo a kind of ego dissolution where they accept it, and may act to precipitate it. They can have all kinds of rationales. But what you might notice is that when things for them are manifestly not okay, they might have a serene expression and a soothing mantra they repeat. Something like, "It's okay" or "It doesn't matter." You might propose something ridiculous, something that might normally provoke an excited response, and instead they might shrug and just say, "Okay," before returning to a neutral expression. They won't be happy, but they will be very relaxed. If someone you know has been in a dark place for a while, and then one day is really cheerful seemingly out of nowhere, it may be a sign that they have decided to commit, and are finally at peace with themselves, knowing that the pain will be over soon if they suddenly start giving away things that are super important to them. That could also be a sign that they are planning to commit. Some people who plan to commit give away things that are important to them so their friends and loved ones can have a part of them to latch onto after they're gone. Last thing, if they make an excessive amount of suicide jokes about themselves, it could be a sign that they are in a dark place. It's not always the case, but it's always a good idea to check in with them anyway, just to make sure they're alright mentally. I was suicidal after my divorce. I actually brought a gun to the beach and walked about 500 yards out onto the sandbar during low tide to just end it. I took my corgi as per usual when I went to the beach. I swear on everything I know she acted different that day. She used to run around and generally ignore me as it was a very private beach and she could just be free. Not that day. She didn't get more than 10 feet from me and would barely go anywhere without turning around and making sure I was there and close. It was the wildest thing. I remember just crying and looking at her. I'm crying now typing this. My whole life I've always been so happy and content. I don't know how that feeling took control of me. Even now it feels like such a close call when I think about it. It's like when a deer jumps out in front of you while you're driving and you barely miss it. That adrenaline close call feeling. Yeah, I still feel like I barely missed it even now when I think about it. My life looks so perfect at the time. Traveled the world for a living, for work, lived near the ocean, and my social media was always positive. Exactly 0 people knew I was dying on the inside, which to me is the scariest part. In hindsight, I had no one I could comfortably talk to about how I was feeling. So no one knew at all. I'm not a depressed person. For me it was rational thinking and it came out of nowhere. I'm not religious and my misery was deep, so why not just end this madness? My corgi saved my life that day and she passed away about 6 months ago. People still don't understand why I can't get over her being gone. I owe her my life for real. I have the most vivid memory of sitting in this little mound out on the sandbar, putting the gun to my head and legit my finger was on the trigger and that fucking dog looked at me as if to say, "What are you doing, you fucking moron?" It's really wild. As I sit here and think about it, I can feel it. Even now it makes me nervous how close I was. No one knew. I didn't allow anyone to know. It has changed my life. I have since told people and keep close friends in the know about how I'm feeling and what's going on with me, or at least make the effort to do that. I'm a 33-year-old dude, in good shape, healthy, make great money, and for all intents and purposes have such a good life that I've worked very hard for. No one on the outside looking in would ever assume I had gone through that or had those thoughts. It literally terrifies me. Anyways, that's my suicide story. In my whole life I would have scoffed at the idea of that, and there I was in that exact situation. Mental health is so incredibly important and it comes at us without notice or warning. For me, when I was trained in suicide prevention, they said sharp abrupt mood, like one day they are sad and upset but the next they are extremely happy. Plan has been made and likely follow through. Can't speak for everyone, but in my case, I don't know if there was anything they could have done. I pretended really well and acted like the responsible kid I was raised to be, but inside I was dying. It would really have come as a shock. If I had to guess though, it's that I acted out in school. Sometimes people might do that if they have tendencies. I don't know. Most people thought I was just difficult or it was part of the growing process. Speaking personally, going through the workday on autopilot. They clearly seem distracted and distant, dissociating, not making eye contact or slurred slow speech. This was my case before I impulsively tried to end my own life when I got home. I was already feeling almost resigned to it throughout the day, as though it was an errand I needed to run. Looking back, I needed help snapping out of my days, but didn't know who to ask. and how to ask to do so. They often talk about it a lot, saying things like kill me or doing the finger gun to the head gesture are so normalized that when people are serious, their cry for help often comes off as a joke. One of my best friends is severely depressed and he jokes about killing himself all the time. Staying in bed all the time. My roommate in college thought it is weird funny that I was always in bed, so much so that she sent me one of those faux retro cards that said I'm really good in bed. I can stay there all day. Funny, but I was just trying to survive until the next day and get relief from the pain, even if only for the few precious moments between sleep and wakefulness. I'm starting to slip into feeling suicidal again, and I do wonder, from an outsider's perspective, what red flags I'm giving off. I feel like I'm dissociating at work at the moment, just managing to do the bare minimum in terms of conversation and responding to stimuli. I feel like I'm half present, so I'd hope that they would at least pick up how absent and quiet I seem. But I'm new to the job, 2 months in, so they might just think this is how I am.